The impossible equation. The crisis unfolds. The emergency session of the Galactic Union convened in the floating chamber above planet Valoris. Representatives from 47 civilizations gathered as holographic projections flickered across the crystalline walls. At the center of attention stood High Analyst Kernthal, a being whose species had mastered mathematics for 3,000 years. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he delivered the devastating conclusion. Thraxis faced complete annihilation. The mining colony had awakened something deep beneath its crust during excavation operations. Seismic readings indicated a chain reaction that would tear the planet apart in exactly 24 hours. 4 million colonists, members of the peaceful Thraxian species, would perish unless evacuated. The problem was simple. The solution was not. Kernthal's tentacles manipulated the holographic display with practiced precision. His calculations filled the air like golden threads weaving through space. Every variable had been considered. Every possibility explored. The mathematics were absolute and unforgiving. The required evacuation exceeds our combined fleet capacity by a factor of 3, Kernthal announced, his voice carrying the weight of certainty. Even utilizing every registered transport vessel within range, operating at maximum efficiency with optimal coordination, we would require 72 hours minimum. We have 24. The chamber fell silent. 4 million lives reduced to numbers on a screen. Ambassador Felshaw of the Zentari Collective rose from her seat, her silver scales catching the light. Her species had faced similar disasters before. She knew what came next. What percentage can we save? Her voice was steady, professional, hiding whatever emotion lurked beneath. Approximately 1,200,000 individuals, Kernthal replied. We prioritize the young, the skilled, and those carrying genetic diversity. We preserve their culture through data archives. It is the best possible outcome given the constraints. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for nearly 3 million beings. Around the chamber, representatives shifted uncomfortably. Some species had experienced such losses in their ancient histories. Others had been fortunate enough to avoid such choices. None enjoyed making them. Humanity speaks. There's another option. The voice came from the human delegation section, where Captain Elena Vasquez stood. She was young by Galactic Union standards, barely past her 40th year. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her uniform bore the insignia of Earth's emergency response fleet. She had the look of someone who had seen disasters before and refused to accept them as inevitable. Kernthal's eyes focused on her with something resembling pity. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community, having joined only 18 years prior. They brought enthusiasm and strange ideas, but they lacked the experience of older civilizations. They had not yet learned that some problems had no solutions. Captain Vasquez, he said gently, I appreciate human optimism, but mathematics is universal. The capacity calculations are final. Your capacity calculations, Elena corrected, stepping forward onto the main floor. Based on your protocols, your safety margins, your documentation requirements. You're trying to evacuate 4 million people using a system designed for controlled, orderly transport. That's your mistake. Around the chamber, representatives exchanged glances. Was this human suggesting they abandon safety protocols? Elder Counselor Dravith, whose species had governed spaceflight for millennia, spoke with barely concealed irritation. Captain, these protocols exist because they save lives. Proper medical screening prevents disease transmission. Documentation ensures families remain together. Capacity limits prevent ships from becoming death traps. These are not arbitrary rules. They're not arbitrary, Elena agreed. They're just wrong for this situation. You're treating an emergency like routine passenger service. We don't have time for routine. We have time for survival. She activated her own data pad, projecting human fleet information into the shared space. The numbers were smaller than the Galactic Union's combined resources, but the proposal was radically different. The Earth Emergency Response Fleet volunteers for full evacuation of their axis. 4 million people. 24 hours. We'll do it in 16. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages as translation systems struggled to keep pace. Kernthal's tentacles writhed in agitation, his mathematical certainty challenged by impossible claims. The debate intensifies. Impossible. Kernthal's voice cut through the noise. Captain Vasquez, your entire fleet comprises only 212 vessels. Even if you pack them beyond all safety limits, you lack the capacity. We're not using just our fleet, Elena replied calmly. Every human ship within range is volunteering. Military transports, cargo haulers, colony ships, private yachts, even interstellar cruise liners. We're up to 473 vessels and counting. Every ship with a working drive and life support is heading to their axis. Untested vessels. Civilian craft not rated for emergency operations. Ambassador HFY interjected. The risks are enormous. The risk is 4 million dead if we don't try, Elena shot back. Yes, we're using civilian ships. Yes, we're going to pack people in tighter than your regulations allow. Yes, we're going to skip documentation until after we save their lives. And yes, it's going to be chaotic and uncomfortable and probably break every rule you have. But everyone will be alive to complain about it afterward. She pulled up her operational plan, and the holographic display showed something that made experienced logistics experts recoil in horror. Landing zones scattered across their axis like a rash. Ships cycling through at intervals measured in minutes rather than hours. Capacity calculations that ignored every safety buffer. It looked less like a plan and more like organized madness. You propose landing ships at sports facilities, public parks, open fields, Kernthal said, his voice rising. These are not certified spaceports. They're flat, they're big, and ships can land there. That makes them spaceports for the next 16 hours. Your loading procedures show no medical screening, no documentation verification, no assigned seating, Felshaw added. How will you track who boards which ship? How will you reunite families? How will you prevent disease transmission? We'll figure it out after we save them, Elena said flatly. Medical screening can happen at the destination. Documentation can be sorted later. Families stick together because we tell them to stick together. We're not trying to run an airline. We're trying to prevent extinction. Elder Counselor Dravith leaned forward, his ancient features severe. And if your plan fails? If ships crash due to inadequate landing coordination? If evacuation zones become chaotic stampedes? If diseases spread through overcrowded ships? You risk turning a natural disaster into a catastrophe of incompetence. Elena met his gaze without flinching. Then we fail having tried everything possible. But we won't fail. Humans don't accept impossible when lives are at stake. We find another way. Sometimes that way is messy, dangerous, and breaks all the rules. But it works. The vote. The debate continued for another hour. Experienced civilizations detailed every way the human plan could fail. Elena countered each objection with human experience from disasters on Earth and colony worlds. She spoke of earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruptions, and the desperate improvisations that saved millions when proper procedures would have saved thousands. Finally, the vote came. The Galactic Union faced a choice between mathematical certainty and human stubbornness. Between saving 1 million through proper protocols or risking catastrophe trying to save 4 million through chaos. The resolution passed by a narrow margin. The human plan received authorization with heavy disclaimers. If it failed, humanity would bear full responsibility. If it succeeded, the Galactic Union would never speak of it again. Elena accepted both conditions. She had 16 hours to prove that sometimes the impossible was just a challenge humanity hadn't attempted yet. Her communications officer opened channels to every human ship converging on their axis. All vessels, this is Captain Vasquez. We're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to save 4 million people in 16 hours using every trick, shortcut, and crazy idea humans have ever invented. Standard procedures are suspended. Safety margins are negotiable. The only absolute rule is that everyone comes home alive. She paused, looking at the holographic display showing their axis rotating peacefully, unaware of the doom approaching and the frantic rescue being organized. Let's show the galaxy what humanity does when told something is impossible. Let's show them why we never learned to quit. Fleet command out. The human armada accelerated toward their axis. Behind them, Kernthal watched the departure with his analytical mind already drafting the disaster report he expected to file. He had no idea he would instead be rewriting every emergency response protocol in galactic history. When chaos becomes order. The fleet arrives. The human armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a cascade of energy signatures that lit up every sensor around their axis. 473 ships of wildly different designs, sizes, and purposes materialized in orbital space. Military cruisers hung alongside passenger liners. Cargo haulers positioned near luxury yachts. Mining vessels formed up with colony transports. It looked less like a coordinated fleet and more like every ship humanity owned had been thrown together randomly. Kernthal observed from the Galactic Union monitoring station, his analytical mind cataloging the chaos. His calculations had given the human plan a 12% probability of success. Watching the disorganized arrival, he revised that estimate downward to 8%. This would be a disaster worth studying for generations. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the USS Prometheus, humanity's newest heavy transport. Around her, holographic displays showed the organized chaos she had created. Each ship had been assigned specific roles based on capacity, speed, and capabilities. The plan existed only in the minds of a dozen human coordinators who communicated through rapid-fire exchanges that made no sense to observers. Commander Chin's status on ground teams? Elena asked, her eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. 40 landing zones marked and ready, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chin replied from the planet's surface. We've got coordinators at each site with basic equipment. The Thoraxians are confused but cooperative. They've never seen anything like this. Neither has anyone else, Elena muttered. Initiate landing sequence. All zones simultaneously. On Kernthal's display, something impossible happened. 40 ships began descending toward their axis at once, converging on locations never designed for spacecraft landings. His tentacles trembled as he watched the trajectories intersect in ways that violated every traffic control protocol. Yet somehow, impossibly, no ships collided. Organized madness begins. The first wave of ships touched down across their axis within a 3-minute window. Heavy transport vessels settled onto sports stadiums, their landing thrusters scorching artificial turf. Colony ships descended into public parks, their bulk dwarfing the trees. Even a converted cruise liner landed in an empty agricultural zone, its elegant design never intended for planetary operations. At Landing Zone 7, a converted cargo hauler named the New Horizon set down with a thud that shook the ground. Its cargo bay doors opened, revealing a space hastily converted into passenger area. Metal floors, basic seating welded into place, and life support systems running at maximum capacity. It was designed to carry mining equipment. Today it would carry people. Commander Sarah Mitchell stood at the base of the loading ramp, her portable communicator crackling with instructions from dozens of locations. Around her, 10,000 Thoraxians waited in organized groups. The aliens were roughly humanoid, with pale blue skin and large eyes adapted for their planet's dim sunlight. They clutched small bags containing whatever possessions they could carry. Children clung to parents. Elderly members leaned on younger relatives. All right, listen up. Sarah's voice carried across the crowd through hastily placed speakers. We're loading by family groups. Stay together. When you board, move to the back quickly. Sit anywhere you fit. We're not assigning seats. We're not checking tickets. We're getting you off this planet alive. Questions? A Thoraxian elder raised a trembling hand. The safety procedures? The documentation? We'll handle that later. Right now your planet is dying. We're saving you first, doing paperwork second. Now move. The loading began. Family groups rushed up the ramp, guided by human volunteers wearing bright safety vests. The process was controlled chaos. People packed into spaces designed for cargo containers. Children sat on parents' laps. Standing room became acceptable. Every square meter of floor space became valuable. Kernthal watched his sensors with growing disbelief. The New Horizons' rated capacity was 800 passengers under standard protocols. He watched 1,000 people board. Then 1,500. At 2,000 he expected catastrophic life support failure. At 2,500, the ship's ramp retracted and engines ignited. They are going to suffocate, he said aloud. The carbon dioxide buildup alone will. The New Horizon lifted cleanly, its trajectory perfect despite the massive overload. Kernthal's sensors showed life support systems screaming at maximum output, but functioning. The humans had stripped every unnecessary system, rerouted power, and pushed their technology to theoretical limits. It was working. The human method. Across 40 landing zones, the same scene repeated with variations. Each human coordinator adapted to local conditions with frightening speed. At Zone 12, when a ship's loading ramp jammed, volunteers formed human chains to pass children up through cargo hatches. At Zone 23, when crowds threatened to panic, a human started singing to calm them, and others joined until 10,000 voices created strange harmony. Elena monitored everything from orbit, making decisions at a pace that left alien observers dizzy. A ship reported engine trouble. She rerouted it to a closer landing zone and sent a replacement. A landing site flooded from a broken water main. She moved operations 500 meters to an adjacent field within minutes. Supply shortages at one zone got solved by raiding another zone's surplus. Captain, we have a problem at Zone 31, Marcus Chin reported, his voice tense. The Thraxian government officials are demanding we follow proper evacuation hierarchies. They want political leaders and scientists prioritized. Elena's response was immediate and sharp. Tell them every life has equal value in this evacuation. We're loading families, not resumes. Anyone who argues gets loaded last. We don't have time for politics. The message got delivered. The arguing stopped. Loading continued. At the 6-hour mark, Kernthal ran updated calculations. The humans had evacuated 800,000 people. His models predicted they would hit capacity limits soon and progress would slow dramatically. Instead, progress accelerated. The second wave of ships arrived from their first runs, having already deposited passengers at human colony worlds and stations. They returned for more. Critical moments. Hour 9 brought the first major crisis. At landing zone 18, a military transport named the Valiant suffered landing gear failure during touchdown. The ship tilted 45 degrees, its nose buried in soft ground. 3,000 Thraxians waited to board a ship that could not safely load passengers. Zone 18, abort loading and wait for replacement vessel, Elena ordered. Negative, command. The Valiant's captain, a grizzled veteran named Rodriguez, replied. We can still load through side hatches. It'll be slower, but we don't quit. Rodriguez, your ship is unstable? My ship has good engines and working life support. Everything else is cosmetic. Give me 40 minutes. Elena made a decision that would haunt her or vindicate her. Approved. 40 minutes, Captain. Make it work. Kernthal watched the Valiant load passengers through emergency hatches while tilted at an angle that should have grounded the vessel permanently. Humans formed bucket brigades, passing children to adults who passed them to crew members inside. The elderly were carried on makeshift stretchers. Somehow, impossibly, 3,000 people boarded a broken ship in 37 minutes. The Valiant's launch was the most terrifying thing Kernthal had ever witnessed. The ship lifted unevenly, compensating for the damaged landing gear with asymmetric thrust that should have torn it apart. It cleared the atmosphere trailing smoke, landed at the nearest human station, and was back in service within 2 hours after emergency repairs that broke every maintenance protocol. The final push. Hour 13 arrived with 3,800,000 evacuated. 400,000 remained, scattered across landing zones as the planet's seismic activity intensified. Ground tremors made landing dangerous. Atmospheric conditions deteriorated as volcanic gases reached the upper atmosphere. All ships, final runs, Elena broadcast. This is going to be rough. Prioritize speed over comfort. Get them loaded and get them out. The last wave descended through atmospheric turbulence that made sensors scream warnings. Ships bounced on their landing struts. Coordination coordinators rushed crowds through loading procedures measured in minutes. There was no time for careful organization anymore. There was only survival. At landing zone 7, Sarah Mitchell watched the ground crack nearby as magma pushed toward the surface. Her ship, the fourth to use this location, settled down amid visible tremors. Move, 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 she shouted, abandoning all pretense of calm organization. Everyone on board now. Thraxians ran. Some fell and were helped up by others. Families dragged elderly members. Strangers carried children not their own. The last person boarded as lava burst through the ground 50 meters away. The ship launched with its ramp still closing. Impossible achievement. Hour 15, 37 minutes. The last ship, a small transport that should have carried 200 people, lifted from their axis carrying 473. Its captain reported critically overloaded systems, failing life support and a damaged engine. Elena vectored 3 nearby ships to escort it, ready to transfer passengers in space if necessary. The escort proved unnecessary. The small ship reached the nearest station running on emergency power and prayers, but it reached safety. Kernthal checked his calculations 3 times because the numbers seemed impossible. 4,073,000 Thraxians evacuated. 16 hours, 11 minutes elapsed time. 0 fatalities. Injuries numbered in the hundreds, mostly minor, all treated. Families separated during loading had been 98% reunited within hours through frantic communication between ships. It was impossible. The mathematics did not support it. Yet it had happened. The Galactic Union Council reconvened in emergency session. Elder Counselor Dravith spoke first, his ancient voice carrying shock. Captain Vasquez, your report indicates complete evacuation success. Our monitoring confirms this. How? Elena appeared via hologram, exhausted but steady. We stopped treating it like a transportation problem and started treating it like a rescue. We accepted risk instead of avoiding it. We trusted people to be decent and brave. And we remembered that sometimes rules exist to be broken when lives matter more than procedures. Ambassador Felshaw leaned forward. You violated 47 safety regulations. You operated ships beyond rated capacity. You used unqualified personnel in critical roles. By all proper standards, this should have been a disaster. By all proper standards, 3 million people would be dead, Elena replied quietly. I'll take violated regulations over body counts every time. The council chamber fell silent. Then slowly Kernthal rose. His tentacles formed a gesture that in his species meant profound respect. Captain Vasquez, I calculated a 12% success probability for your plan. I was wrong. Humans do not operate by calculated probabilities. You operate by stubborn refusal to accept the impossible. I request permission to study your methods. The Galactic Union's emergency protocols require complete revision. Elena Smilet-Tiredli. Permission granted. But first, let me sleep for about 16 hours. Saving 4 million people is exhausting. The transmission ended. Across human space, ships returned to normal operations with new stories of the day humanity looked at impossible mathematics and simply did it anyway. The Thoraxians began new lives on colony worlds, carrying memories of the day strangers from Earth refused to let them die. And in the Galactic Union archives, a new notation appeared in emergency response protocols. When all calculations suggest impossibility, consult human methods. They have different mathematics.